Flip it out for Davis Sherwood. Touchdown, Notre Dame.
He always asks me every other week, did I open it yet? And I was like, but I told him I want to do it. I'm going to do it a certain way. So he said, it's already out there. We can kind of just talk about that. Like, I haven't opened up the book because I wanted to. All right, bro. You get it? So what's going on? This is Will Bradley. So I'm sitting here with one of the most special athletes that we have been blessed to train, my guy, Davis Sherwood. So we've got a long, deep relationship with Davis and his family. So I actually started training his older brother and older sister when they were in high school. And Davis used to come around when he was 5, 6, 7 years old, just kind of watching what's going on. So when it was his time to start training, parents brought him in. He's been with us since he was 9 years old. And it's just been dope seeing his whole journey going from being a little chubby 9-year-old kid to a scholarship athlete at Notre Dame. So what brings us here today is Davis wrote a children's book. And I haven't opened it yet because I wanted to present this story the right way. And I wanted to open it with Davis being here. So everything aligned, we're here, and we're going to make it happen.
That's nice.
It's dope.
That's nice. It's really nice.
Woody, what would Woody do? The story of a young boy's dream to play football at Notre Dame. Wow. All right, so I'll read this part too. So, to Will, thank you for your never-ending support and belief in me. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for making my dream possible and changing my life forever. I'd never be here without you and would be a friend and client for life. I will definitely miss my time with you in the lab and will be stopping by often. Keep changing lives and making dreams come true. Whole click eating. Woody, number 38. Oh, that's dope, bro. Oh, this is dope, man. Love you too, man. Yeah. All right. You come in. Cut it. This is dope. Literally the whole story and everything I just told you is really in here too, which is crazy. Now that we've opened the book, let's just kind of talk about the book and then what it's about and then the inspiration. So obviously this is Davis's story. So Davis, just kind of tell everybody about the book, the inspiration, what it's about.
Yeah, so the book's about, my story to get to play at Notre Dame, which was like a lifelong dream come true. And it was really to, bring awareness to, how your path to your final destination, your goals in life, it's going to, can wind and you might have to make changes to make them happen. Yes. But, if you never give up on yourself, you can really accomplish these things and, achieve great things. And I was really lucky to, be around Will. And know his story, starting as a walk-on at Temple, being undersized and never letting that stop him to earn a scholarship and start playing a lot and have a chance to maybe go on to the next level. And so I kind of had a very similar story. I ended up I had a bunch of college scholarship offers out of high school, but it wasn't to a school like Notre Dame, which is my dream school. So after being able to train here with Will, I knew I could do that and I believed in that, and I had his story to look to, this can come true. So that worked out for me. I earned a scholarship after my first semester, but not everyone knows that's an option. Not everyone knows that if you put all the chips in on yourself, there's a chance that you're going to come out and achieve your dreams. So I just wanted to really be able to tell people that they can do that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think that's something I don't do a good job of anymore, is just talking about my story. At this point, I just feel like it's not about what I did a long time ago. I'm so far removed from my days as an athlete that, you just don't think that those things are relevant. So to hear stories scenarios like yours, man, where you've kind of taken my story and used it as inspiration to be able to make your dreams come true, it makes me want to revisit things and probably talk about my story a little bit more. And it's not just you. We've helped so many athletes over the years walk on to college football programs and leave as starters and scholarship athletes. And, I guess that's a result of, them being able to look at my story and see that it can be true. So the way I look at it is if it's something that you've accomplished, you can go back and teach others how to do it. So you're definitely going to make me revisit, telling my story more.
Yeah, so with the book, it really starts with me, being really young, actually playing locally here at Lewis Center through the Greensboro Ravens. And then I took a winding journey and I went to 3 different high schools, had a lot of coaching changes, but, I was always just trying to be at the best place to develop me and get to that next level. But something that's not really in the book, there's, I think Will at the end, because it's been a huge part of that, is like, I think it's really important that, there are changes in life and there's going to be tons of things that, go wrong or you need to adapt to, but the one thing that was always constant for me was I worked out with Will since I was 9, and that was the true belief of like he believed in me before I believed in myself, and it's important to have those people in your camp and to really ride with them, because if it weren't for him, I know for a fact like I wouldn't have walked on. I would have gone to one of the lower level FBS or FCS offers I had, and been happy playing there, and that's great for a lot of people, but like he inspired me to really strive for more and knew I could get more. So the book really talks about that. It talks through after each coaching change, each like at Petty school there was no more football program anymore, and I had to transfer again to Good Counsel in Maryland and live with a family there. So it really talked about like how when you reach an obstacle, like you can kind of figure out, what's most important to you and figure out a way to, overcome that obstacle. And, that's not possible without people like Will and like, my parents, your parents, whoever's supporting you to be able to give you that constant support to make the changes necessary to follow your dreams.
Okay. So I already know what my favorite part of the book is.
The Ravens.
You know that already. This is simple. So if we talk about my favorite part of the book, it's Davis's time with the Ravens, right? So what that was we had to take Davis out of the suburbs and take him to the hood so he could get a little bit grittier and tougher. And like you said, even in the book, I valued my teammates and learned how to hit, right? I think everybody knows that has seen Davis play football. His calling card is his physicality, his ability to take somebody's soul through hitting him. So, and it takes me back to that time when he actually was playing with the Ravens. Like, I can remember this like yesterday. So, I think my favorite parts of the book are always going to be the younger when he's talking about when he was younger, just the younger stages, right? And that's just because it really takes me back to, our time being in the gym together, right? He said he went to 3 different high schools. I told you earlier. He went to boarding school, so he wasn't really here. He was here, but it wasn't. But those times when he was playing rec ball is when he was here consistently 2 to 3 times a week.
My first dream's always been football, and actually, I'm going to go into it. I actually, just deferred from dental school and, want to be an oral surgeon like my dad to be able to, give back in the local community and work here and help people. Right now I'm going to train and do pro day next year and, pursue football to the very end, which again, like I never believed that was truly possible. Will, believed in that, showed me, hey, I move well enough to do this. I learned, how to do all that. So I'm gonna live that dream out as far as I can. But afterwards, I got accepted to dental school. I want to become an oral surgeon like my dad and 2 of my brothers are now, who work in Danville, Virginia. So we live in Greensboro. It's about 45 minutes from here, but it's like a rural community with a lot of need. And I think that's something that's super important to me, and maybe even more so than the rest of my siblings and my dad. Just being around Will, spending some time at like Lewis Center, the Ravens, and seeing just the amount of impact you can have on people, like just by being very intentional in their lives. Helping as a doctor, helping as a coach, a trainer. So that's something that's really important to me, is to be able to give back. Actually, my book, all the proceeds are going to the Boys and Girls Club of South Bend. The St. Joseph County is where South Bend and Notre Dame's located. So I wanted to, not make any money from this myself either, but just, put the money back to people that could use it. And, something I'm super excited about is, Will's given me all the tools to be able to really change, lives in terms of athleticism and training. I've always been able to help my friends throughout high school, even college at Notre Dame, telling them, hey, this is going to get you better. So that's something I'm really excited to be able to do. And, I'm sure people will see me back in the community here coaching and training, and definitely bringing my kids to Will's one day. Might be in a bigger facility, hopefully. But, yeah, so I definitely want to be around and give back and just see how, like, football and, training with Will has taught me, like, lifelong lessons of hard work. He always talks about, beyond that integrity and, being a man of character and, like, really earning your way through life. Like, you get what you put into it. And that's something that, is a huge way of teaching kids through sports. So that's something I want to be involved in. And then beyond that, to be able to, help people through, medicine, oral surgery, like, through dental care. I think that's something I'm really excited about as well. I'd say, like, for me, like, I kind of talk about it in the book, like, it was never football first. It was always football along with academics. And, even if it's beyond academics, if it's like a trade that you have a calling to, it's like football taught me so many skills that, football comes to an end. I'm experiencing that now. Luckily it was the national championship game. We lost, but it was my last game of college football. It's done. I can't play again. But, what I learned, that's going to be, the lifelong value. It's, obviously the memories, but it's like the traits, and it's the resilience, it's the determination to be able to, impact other people. So that's something that, the classroom, Notre Dame's a great school. I'm blessed to have gone there. Like, that's not what's going to prepare me for dental school and, to become an oral surgeon. It really was my time, training here. I remember spending, 5 hours a day in here, like, I knew, like, hey, if this is something I want to do, I'm going to put in all the work necessary. So, to become, a doctor, I'm going to do all the work necessary to, learn what I need to do, like, perfect the skills and, be able to, then create something that I can give to other people. So I think that's something that's so cool about, sports, and Will specifically, that's been able to teach me.
Like I said, I could have done a lot of other things, with my life. And anybody that knows my story knows that being a trainer was not at the top of my list. This was not something that I saw myself doing, and I actually thought about this morning. It was like, man, there were so many other things that I wanted to do, but as Davis said, everybody has their specific calling, and this is it. So to be able to see that, my values and my morals and my work ethic and everything I've done with my career was able to inspire somebody else to come along and make their dreams come true, and really just adopt those same values and morals and use it on their journey to be able to come back and help the next person and kind of pay it forward. It makes everything worth it. So extremely grateful.